Welcome, Lauren and Chris, and fellow Snowpoet fans, to our second podcast episode exploring the music of the group. Hi, guys.
Hey, Oli.
Hello.
Guys, I loved our last chat, and for me, having initially discovered the project first via your third album, it was great for me to have the blanks kind of filled in and all that greater context that I learned about how you guys met and developed the sound and making that transition from like students to pro album music making. So today we'll be exploring your second album, Thought You Knew, from 2018, and then we'll move on to our deep dive featured track, which is It's Already Better Than Okay, which I'm really looking forward to getting into. So I think something we imagine we touched on today is that with this album there was a kind of shift from the first one in terms of musical goals, and also due to some unexpected circumstances to navigate, which kind of impacted things as well. So we'll get into that. But perhaps we start by sort of picking up from where we left off in terms of like you've just finished the album cycle for the first album, you're thinking about a follow-up, about doing new music. So maybe we start there. What was in your mind about doing a follow-up, and what did you want to do?
We had, we'd finished the first album and we'd released it and we were really happy with it, and we'd picked up some, listeners, followers, people that enjoyed the music. So we had the kind of the energy behind us, and
And we played a couple of gigs.
we'd played some gigs.
Yeah, nice.
And we were, I think anyone who's in a band or in a group, you kind of go through your first cycle, and then after about a year of the record coming out, you start to go, okay, what are we going to do next? And on a personal, I'd been listening to a lot of folky music at the time, and had really sort of fallen in love with kind of more acoustic-y sounding records, as opposed to electronic and stuff, which I was kind of more into at the time of the first record. And I remember chatting to Lauren and saying, I'd love to make an album with you where it's just like really intricate, acoustic guitar lines and
a stripped back kind of sensibility.
Stripped back, more simple, and kind of more of a one sound kind of album where like you put on track 5 and track 2 and they kind of sound the same. They're different, but they have, the album has more of a single
cohesiveness.
Cohesiveness, as opposed to like the first record, which you'd have a piano and vocal tune and then a tune with like loads of electric guitars and synths and stuff. I think when the time came, I think that was a kind of opening conversation, right?
I think so. Yeah. And you were kind of getting to grips with playing more acoustic guitar, and you were kind of excited about that. You were like, hey, look, I could do this. What about this?
Yeah. Well, you say could play acoustic guitar. I wouldn't say I can play acoustic guitar. I found an acoustic guitar in the house share I was living in, and I was picking it up, and without any kind of any clue and as to what I was playing, I kind of, because I played bass, I kind of, the first 4 strings, I kind of had an idea of where to go. But there was something quite nice, liberating about that, where I'd sit at a piano and write chord sequences. With the guitar, I was just finding shapes. So kind of the harmony, the chord, the chord stuff was definitely different, just because I didn't know what I was doing.
And the kind of the mobility of it as well. So it made us move to kind of different locations and physical environments and being outdoors, and it kind of changed kind of what came out, didn't it?
Yeah.
Because we were just sitting in parks, we were outside, we were in an acoustic space ourselves.
Wow.
Yeah.
Were you in the parks?
Yeah,
mostly,
we
just
did.
hanging.
Yeah, we did. We hung out in Victoria Park because
Really?
You weren't too far from there, nor was I. Actually, no, I was in South London at the time. And
you were in Honour Oak Park.
You were like, where is this place?
Yeah.
So interesting.
The with the park thing was was nice actually. I feel like it's whenever anyone asks about writing this album, my first memory is the parks, because I kind of feel like we wrote this whole record in parks.
Really?
Basically.
Yeah.
We met in a park and I bought the acoustic and
wow.
Yeah, and it was a really hot summer, so there was a lot of people outside, and London has, as we all know, a plethora of parks and open spaces where people can just kind of hang in the summers and take music and food and all that kind of stuff. So it was very casual, and there was kind of like, I don't know, there was a sense of like, I don't know how to explain it, public. It was just an openness. It was, we were doing something quite intimate, but it was just in a park with loads of people making noise, and
it's so interesting.
I had the it was the kind of the first time I'd done the voice notes memos thing where you hit record on voice memos on your phone, and you start, because we were writing, there was no way to document stuff, so we were so scared of forgetting what we'd written. So I've got a load of
record.
It's actually terrifying, the idea that you strike gold and you forget it.
Yeah, oh God, yeah. I mean, so many times I think that's happened. But yeah, listening back to some of those voice memos, speaking of voice memos.
Do you know what? This is incredibly unprofessional, guys. I'm so sorry. I don't know why my iPad's ringing, but hopefully we can get rid of that. I wasn't anticipating that to happen. I'm sorry about that.
Don't be silly.
Let's just try and turn that off, and maybe we can edit that out in a minute.
I like it.
At the pivotal, just at the pivotal moment of things. So we were saying about voice memos and recording to try and
it
to
was
try and
very
remember.
lo-fi, wasn't it?
It was very lo-fi.
Those original collections of information and of musical gatherings and stuff. We were just, it was basically iPhone voice memos, little snippets of progressions, little moments of verses and what the melody could be like, and kind of echoes of lyrics, and
And just thinking about the previous record, because I gather you guys still wrote the previous record together.
Yeah.
This record you've written together, but you're writing this together, in a new way, I'm gathering, and also with the benefit of the deeper connection forged from the previous record. But what was perhaps different about this writing process than the previous one, and how did that impact the results, do you think, in the writing specifically?
I feel like it was a very different experience for me, because there was a sense of urgency to the music making that wasn't there for me in the first album. I think, and I think that links to kind of, I suppose, the emotional weight of what was coming out.
Yeah.
And it was like it was a hard time. It was like, and this was our, breakup album, where the kind of the content and the emotional language around the whole text was about love and pain and loss, and there was a real immediacy to the text, because I was just going through it.
I see.
So there was just kind of like, and I remember Chris being like, "We've got to get this down. Stop, Lauren." So I'd be like in effing bits, just be like, I think Chris is like, this is gold dust. So we'd kind of be like this unfurling of, kind of, information and musical ideas, but we were still just sitting in a park, and we were just, the ideas were coming out, and it was quite fast, but it was still in this really raw emotional time.
Got it.
So, there's a sense of urgency I
singularity
feel like,
to the
exactly.
album as well.
There's like the message, it's very, and again, like you were saying, the cohesiveness of it was just one direction, and I think that spans all of the songs on the album.
Totally, yeah.
And the difference between being in like a rehearsal room writing versus being in an open space where there's people and there's also this emotional context of what's going on, and so that shapes that's in itself changes everything, does it, do you think, or shaped everything?
Definitely. And Lauren was definitely going through something at the time, and I think it's a universal, love, loss, all that kind of stuff. I was relating to it. I wasn't maybe going through it at that specific time, but I was definitely super connected to it. And I remember meeting up with Lauren, and you were in such a specific space, and being outdoors just really helped. That, I think, being
it really
indoors.
Did. Being outdoors in the sun, and that feeling of being in the summer and everything's okay because you're in the sunshine again, and you're hanging out with with mates, and you're outside. There's a feeling of release, you know, when you can do that. I love that about summer, and I love that about summer in London. And I think I found it very cathartic and therapeutic just to be like, let's just get it out. Just get all this stuff out.
Yeah.
Amazing. And we talked about this idea of a shift musically, and you'd mentioned that there was more, maybe perhaps leaning in for you, Chris, personally, the folk elements and the guitar led. For both of you, was there quite a conscious feeling about what you wanted this record to be versus the second one? Was there actual explicit dialogue, or like other things you've mentioned, was it more a kind of, we're of one accord in a very natural kind of way, and it doesn't even really need to be discussed? I'm just curious, like, how conscious it was where you landed musically versus the first one.
I think the two things came at the right time. I think, if I'd have said to Lauren, why don't we do something with piano layers or whatever, I think Lauren would have been up for it. But I think it was serendipitous that the sound that I had for the record perfectly fit the meaning of what the record was for Lauren. They just came together. Wow. It was just like, this makes total sense. That this instrumentation and production approach matches this,
the narrative,
the deep emotional narrative of what you're saying lyrically and what we're writing about from a songwriting perspective. It was, but I think definitely when we were writing, because we were writing on one guitar and one voice, I think as we wrote the songs, you kind of knew, a cello would be, incredible for this, drums playing brushes, these
the arrangements and how things started to build. Yeah, that all started to come after the initial just ideas, the initial nucleus. Yeah. And
Lauren, for you, just from a lyric point of view, obviously it sounds like you were going through a particular thing which you were really drawing on for this record. To what extent do you feel that on each record it's helpful for you to have a kind of overarching through line from a thematic point of view? Is that a thing, or does it just depend on the record? Like this particular record, I happen to be going through this, so I drew on this. Is every record, do you like to have a thing, an overarching thing?
I don't know. I guess it depends on who I'm making music with and how much I am bringing to it of myself. You know, I mean, I think we had conversations about being interested in the unconscious, self-conscious stream of, speaking space, and that kind of seeing what happens with that when you let that be part of a composition, or when you let that be part of text. And I think we started to move into that space more,
like just writing your thoughts, and making sense of it.
Yeah.
Do you think this is a good moment for us to do a bit of listening to our featured song? Because I think so much will flow from there in terms of the production and the approach to the record. Does that feel like a good shout?
I think so. So yeah, we are opening up. It's already better than okay, which was which we didn't actually record in the park, or in a park. We didn't write
it in the park, but I remember because I was just getting the train to Leytonstone to meet Chris and Alex, and I was saying, oh God, what are we going to do this morning? And I need to have had this body of text ready to go, and I'm not sure. And I had jotted down a few like bullet points about
Right.
things that I might want to discuss.
Okay.
But we had this kind of idea that we were just going to record an improvisation, and based on 2 chords.
Yeah.
And it was something that we hadn't really tried yet, as a way of composing. So yeah, I felt nervous about it, and as Chris usually is, as in he was just saying, let's just give it a go, and we'll just see what happens.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? There's no pressure on this,
Yeah.
and let's just press record kind of thing.
Yeah.
Before we play, I'll just say something about the studio process, because we booked two days at Fieldgate Studios, which is a studio in Penarth in South Wales, which we'd planned to all go down and track the songs, because we kind of went into this album knowing what we were going to record, in that sense. Like, I'd kind of written the 2-part guitar parts with Nick Costley-White, the guitarist,
Yeah.
prior to the recording, so we was pretty prepared. That's why we'd only booked 2 days, because we were like, let's try and just hammer it out, get all the stuff recorded, and then I think the day before.
Yeah, I'm just remembering that now with my dad.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, because we were supposed to go to Fieldgate, and then I was in Canada on this yoga retreat by myself in the middle of nowhere, -25 snow.
Wow.
And I'd heard that my dad had this bike accident. It was a really serious
gosh.
accident. So I couldn't meet you guys.
Yeah.
And I had to fly straight home and go to where he was in Portugal, and he was in a coma for a while. It was a really
Very
serious. He's fine. I mean, he's doing amazingly now. He's in, it's like it never happened.
Top form, yeah.
Top form. And he'll listen to this thinking, yeah, that's mad. That was the time. So yeah, that changed.
That changed the
process,
because we were suddenly like, okay, shit, like this is serious. We've lost Lauren. Obviously, there's no, you of course go and see your dad, but what are we going to do? Okay, cool. Let's just track everything instrumentally, and then we'll do the vocals in post production, as opposed to in the same time span of the studio.
Which raises so much, and that's kind of what I'd meant in touching on unforeseen circumstances.
Yeah,
in the
sorry,
intro.
I wondered what you meant by that. And I was like, God,
No.
am I supposed to know?
So listeners, Lauren was looking at me, and I suddenly started panicking, thinking that I'd, imagined something. Actually, no, Ollie, we went in the studio and it was fine. What are you talking about, mate?
When actually it was like this life-threatening.
Yeah.
No, but you know what? I think it's really good to have that context, because it opens up all manner of things, doesn't it? In terms of like, what was the process of then doing the vocals together?
Yeah.
What was the
Yeah.
process for you singing? What was the process for you, Chris, of stewarding the guys through this in the
Yeah.
studio? There's all kinds of things that opens up. Right?
Yeah, and it also affected other tunes on the album, because then I wrote remotely for the last track.
Yeah.
And
to
I
the
was
instrumentals.
Yeah, and that was really nice to write it there, because I was very much alone then, and that text and that melody that just came out really effortlessly as well, and it was great to have the trust and understanding of the team, the band,
Yeah.
and that we would just be able to co-create separately. So it was just a mixture of us working intensely together acoustically in an open space. Then you go into the studio and saying, all right, look, we have all this material. Could everybody, can we play this? And then us coming together with Alex for the track.
So it was kind of 2 stages with the kind of before we went to mixing, which was studio for 2 days where we were tracking the instrumentals.
Without Lauren.
Yeah, and sometimes it was kind of like, shooting in the wind or whatever, because some of them were out of time. So I was kind of having to just imagine I was Lauren, and because there's a couple of ballads in there which have got no click and stuff. The last track, Another Step, I remember me and Matt Robinson, I was just like,
Can we dig
now.
into?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you know what? It was amazing, because I think I remember at the time you were just saying, I have to just imagine what she might do, or what she might, as in how she might imply, how she might sing this phrase, or how she might do what she's going to do.
Yeah.
And it was perfect, because when you said it to me, it was just like, boom,
Yeah.
done.
So it's testament to the levels of trust and knowledge of each other already that you just knew what
and
to
Matt's
do.
playing.
Yeah.
And we'll
Matt's-
talk about Matt,
Matt's
Yeah.
relationship
Sensitivity.
with just being able to. I mean, he's an incredible musician, and how he works with voice and comping or what that is for him is next level. It's so intuitive and sensitive, and it's a dream playing with him.
And that's another really strong collaboration. A vocalist and the pianist it's a very special, deep collaboration, and I can speak from experience, relationship, which is really interesting.
And he was probably happy because it was a Fazioli as well.
Yeah.
Oh well, there you go.
Yeah.
But that's another sort of element to listen for when we listen to this. Also, so we're listening also from the point of view that these vocals were overdubs. Right? This is where you came in.
Yeah. Well,
after the fact.
exactly, because he had recorded the guitar part.
Yeah, so this track, which we'll now get into, it's already better than okay. We had a bit of extra time, and I thought, it'd be nice to give Lauren some extra instrumental stuff, that if there's something there that she can put something on top of. So we sort of came up with this 2-chord vamp with a really simple drum part. It's acoustic guitars, piano and drums. So if we hit play on the
Would I go back?
so if you take up the vocal, so it's just this 2-chord vamp, which I just thought is a nice space to just do something with it. And this is where Lauren came into. We were in the post-production stages at Alex Kilpatrick's place, and he was mixing out of his bedroom at the time in Leytonstone, and Lauren was. Did you know that you were going to do something on this, or were you just?
Well, no, you were just saying we're looking at more material today, and here's these 2 chords. Let's see what we can do. But I remember saying to you, I'm not really sure what's gonna. Well, let's just give it a try.
Yeah.
But you were just kind of nudge,
Yeah.
which is again what you do so well. Yeah.
And so, Lauren, these lyrics were written on the way to the session?
No, they weren't. They were improvised. I mean,
completely improvised.
Well, I had written. There was a few bullet points that I thought maybe I could talk about. The relationship and what it meant, and how I can move on from it. And it's funny because a few things came out. At the time, I was researching this dancer, Yvonne Rayner, who is this amazing choreographer and artist, and she wrote this memoir called Feelings Are Facts. And I was reading it at the time and interested in how she worked with her dancers, because she studied a lot of Pele football movements, and thinking about incorporating football moves basically into dance at the time, and how that meant you'd have indeterminate sequences as you'd move in ways that weren't expected.
Right.
So stuff like that came out in this improv, and I don't know. Yeah, it just came out as in that's kind of what happens, isn't it?
But you had some bullet points of kind of things to something of a framework. Is that right?
Yes, as in I wanted to talk about the relationship in a sense, and how I was feeling at that time, and the immediacy of, and the urgency again of how much you're involved in the intensity of the experience.
Yeah. What I love about this is the fact that it was improvised. It was this was take 1. We didn't do any other takes. It's
Just
the first
one
thing that
take. I think
came
we
out.
need to emphasise that. Just one take.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
it's the first
isn't
thing
it?
that came out, and you feel. For me, I just felt so alive listening to it, because you were just on the edge of your seat, because Lauren was like, "Cool, I'll just see what comes out," and this amazing, paragraph or whatever passage of words came out, and
my favourite moment of it is when, And you can still hear a little bit on the end of the track is when you hear Chris turn around in his seat and he inhales and he goes, yeah, I think we've got it. And then we don't have that on the recording, but you can hear his intake of breath, and that's ingrained in my brain that he
really.
I
didn't even know that was there.
Yeah, I think it's great. It's there. It's right then. You can just hear your voice.
Recording?
Yeah, on the recording.
Ah.
Had you ever done anything quite like this before, Lauren?
Yeah, I had worked with improvising text in a few different settings, more jazz related settings, but not in this kind of context where there was just a guitar motif or a repeated guitar motif. So it was definitely a new experience.
Yeah, but I bring some of the vocals in now so we can hear.
The listeners are screaming at us to hear the vocals now. So.
And I think this,
because what comes out is the truth. I've been trying to separate my
I think it was a really nice intersection for me and Chris to start working together, where we were bringing elements of what we're really into. And for me, I'm really into improvisation and how the idea of kind of, spontaneous composing can be in the recording space.
Oh God, yeah, definitely.
And same with Chris when he takes it away, and then being able to kind of sculpt and move and work with material. I think it was a point where we were bringing different but complementary assets together in the music making process. Totally.
And doing tunes like this, it's another, like, talking about light bulb moments. It's like, oh wow, like Lauren's capable of doing this kind of stuff. Next time we write, you need to get a good microphone up, next time, because we might miss. Do you know what I mean? If this was just a sound check, then we would have lost this, this take. So I think it's something where I think, especially in the new album,
it changed our writing process a bit. In that any time that we were working with new ideas, we just have to get them down and make sure we start recording everything immediately. Even the last one, like not Our World, but Host, but also the second track,
Our World.
Yeah, Our World.
It's a big test, isn't it, to remember?
Yes. So it drove us into a new compositional process. That's what I'm trying to say.
Definitely.
And that was exciting because it spurred on new ways of technique and learning for me, and similar to you.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, it's like, Lauren, you seem to have arrived at this really interesting combination of elements as a vocalist and songwriter, with your background as a jazz improviser, vocalist, speech, poetry, also as a songwriter, more dialed in kind of hook-based melodies. And I'm just really curious at how you arrived at this kind of cocktail of approaches as a vocalist, really, and it's so evidenced on this track, I think.
I think all the information that goes together to make a moment of improvisation happens over a span of a long time, and sensorially or visually or emotionally, all of those things are, they're gathering bits of information in you. I think that's what I find so interesting about the moment, that it's data that you keep on collecting. So, books that I read, and research books and non-fiction books, and, walks and films and being in certain places and conversations with people, and being interested in the nuts and bolts of, peopling, as in just what it all means. And I think all of those gatherings, come into that moment. And I think about it a lot. I mean, I teach it a lot, and I think about it a lot, and I read about it a lot. So it's nice being able to discover who you are as an artist through the recording process as well, through improvisation.
And what are some of the things that you think you might have discovered from doing this about you as an artist through this record or this song or this process?
I don't know. I mean, I think how necessary it is to make art.
Yeah.
And how that feeling of needing to express something and to communicate something with others that you know that people go through, and that there's meaning in that shared connectivity that we have through pain and loss and love and kind of how we experience our lives. Yeah, there's an urgency to experience that through music making for me.
Yeah.
And I respond to that in the music. Yeah, in music that I listen to myself, or in conversations that I have with people, or in texts that I read, you know.
I think it's the honesty as well that really connects and cuts through as well, and in the way you write and perform. There's so much honesty. I think that's, for me as a listener of you, that's what really gets to me. It's really stark honesty.
Yeah, and sorry, go on, Chris.
No. That was the point.
It sort of leads me to maybe ask you about the process of capturing a vocal like that.
Yeah.
You know, how do you do it? How do you capture a vocal like that? I mean, aside from having a great vocalist with a great set of lyrics, from your point of view, production-wise, both Answer It Anyway, sonically, the space you create, how you organise things as a vocal producer.
I think obviously from a technical perspective, it's like, make sure there's a really good microphone up, make sure you've got those things are in place. And, Alex taught me that is always set up for something special to happen, even if you don't think it's going to happen.
Expect the magic. Be ready for
exactly.
it.
And then it's an atmosphere thing, and it's a relaxation thing, because, we were doing these vocals in Alex's bedroom in Leighton, so we're not in a big studio surrounded by candles and stuff like that. So, as much as we'd like to be, but so it's more about just everyone feeling calm and relaxed and like, cool, what happens happens.
And just the willingness to and I don't even mean it in such a binary sense of fail or succeed, but just the willingness just to capture vulnerability and just to be open with, trusting that things are going to happen. And
I always think with producers, it's not like, here we go, take one, are you ready? Okay, here we go.
This is
3,
literally
2, 1.
the opposite
You're on.
of you. I can speak somebody who's also had the pleasure of making a record with you.
Yeah.
He's not like that, is he, Laura? Thank God.
No.
Yeah.
But and you were mentioning Alex. Alex is the same, as in being in a recording environment with Alex. He's just 100% pro.
Yeah.
And he has, as much invested interest and time and patience and just believing in the thing itself. And that is a really important facet of working with a sound engineer in that kind of emotional, vulnerable space as well, you know?
Yeah.
And if you feel like, and because a lot of the time it would be Alex, myself and Chris over the years. And that's
the energy of just a person in the room. And a lot of the times you do need an engineer in a room, I'm a producer. I can engineer to a level, but I can't engineer to the level of Alex. So, when you're making music properly, you need a good engineer in there. And someone's energy, just someone walking in a room can just completely change the vibe. And that's so important, especially with this kind of music, to have the right person in there,
Yeah, and I think maybe something also that's interesting, again, for some of the younger listeners and people just making their way is digging deep into what it means to be professional. And sometimes when you're starting out, we think it's a kind of corporate, transactional cold. It can come across that way, but we're talking about a definition of being professional that has a lot of heart, doesn't it? And trust and humanity, actually, and commitment to the moment,
and
right?
interest, like deep interest.
That's it, isn't it? Being engaged and interested.
Being really engaged in process and the experimentation of making something in a recording setting.
Yeah.
And I think we all bring our different aesthetic interests to that process, and it's also we're coming from very different places, and that's what's so exciting for me, that we merge all those things together.
Definitely.
You know,
Something that I wanted to ask you, and I've got particular skin in the game here, is really about Matt Robinson, and we were talking about what makes, from your point of view, a great accompanist, and what makes him so special, and that dynamic and that facet of the collaboration within Snowpoet and within this track, Lauren.
He's a very humble person.
Yeah.
Extremely humble.
And I think, yeah, his humility, I don't know.
Sensitivity,
I think, his sensitivity and his humility, I think that comes across. And his openness and his curiosity and his willingness to just make something the best it can be, with also amazing choices.
Yeah.
You know?
Amazing taste. And the touch, the touch on the piano, it's like, it's funny, there's so many amazing pianists out there, but the touch thing is so, when you start getting really into the pianist touch, like he's got a really special touch on the piano, and that's hard to find sometimes. Yeah. And he's such a deep listener. Like he's such a deep listener. He listens to everything you say and takes it on, and it's that sensitivity,
And Chris, for you, on a production level, maybe thinking about this track, but then zooming out and thinking about your production holistically, your journey as a producer from the previous album to this album. When you listen back to this, what do you think about where you were in terms of your journey as a producer? What sort of growth was reflected? What different things were in your mind? Like, where were you up to with this?
I think this is the thing we were chatting about earlier, which is like, I think the first record was like, wow, this, we can do this and we can do this. And I think this one was definitely a bit of a reining it in situation, right? Where you're like, okay, these are the possibilities, but actually we don't have to do everything. We can bring things in, and we can be a bit more maybe sophisticated and a bit more what's the word I'm looking for when you're looking for a scope of a
I as you're saying it, as in it's not narrowing, because there was no narrowness about it, but it was just very focused. The sound, as in, and paring back, there was nothing superfluous about the choices. There's nothing added extra.
Reining it in, and but it's funny, like I still wasn't in producer. I'm a producer, or anything like that. I was still working with Alex, and at that time I still didn't really have any of the chops, sat at the computer. I was still very much like saying to Alex, oh, can we make the guitar sound a bit more like this, or can this cello go into this reverb, and the reverb kind of fizzle off slowly and stuff. So I was definitely producing more from a kind of distant, standing behind the engineer at the computer.
And what was the process to get to that next more hands-on sort of behind the computer? Was that was the journey to that? How did that happen?
The journey to that was Alex was always encouraging me to do it myself, basically, and I always had this kind of narrative in my head, I can't do that, it looks so complicated, I'm not gonna be able to do that. And actually it was after this record, and when we moved on to our third record, Wait For Me, that was the first time I'd sat in front of a Pro Tools and was like, cool, here we go, it's just me and you, boy.
Yeah, was that exciting? Was it scary? What was the vibe?
Do you know what? It was kind of mental actually, because I'd watched Alex on Pro Tools for so long, and I was obviously, seriously watching what he's doing. When I actually sat down at Pro Tools, I kind of just started using it really well.
Had you absorbed more than you'd realised?
Yeah, it was quite surreal. It was almost like...
I remember seeing you sitting behind Alex in when we were in his dad's place in Southampton and in his place in Leytonstone as well. And Chris would just be kind of sitting behind Alex going, "What are you doing there? What's that? Okay." And you were just always taken in.
And the first time I saw Alex EQing, I was like, "What the fuck is that?
Yeah.
What is that?"
Yeah.
When he's, finding resonances and then squeezing them out. I was like, "What the hell?" But
love it.
But yeah, the third record, Wait For Me was the beginning of...
Yeah.
And again, because circumstantially it had to be because of the time that we were making it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, which we'll get into for sure. Something that you'd said to me when we had our pre-chat was that, Chris, that you'd said, just to sort of bring this back in, was that you felt with hindsight that perhaps fans of the project may have not quite expected the second record, the follow-up, to sound like this, and not in a bad way, like I think maybe in a just interesting, good surprise. But is that something that you both feel looking back on this record, as the second record is always a tricky one, the follow-up? So was it do you think it was received differently? And
do you know what, I was just thinking of it, a lad who sent me an email last week, I forgot to say this actually, and he was just asking about when the new record is coming out, and he was saying, because the second album has always been my favourite, Thought You Knew. And a few people have said that to me over the years, that they go back to that album as being the most direct and intimate and pared back and emotionally connected, and that the instrumentation and everything makes sense to them in such a complete way. And I get that, as in I feel like that it was such a moment in time.
Yeah.
And it was a very succinct, cohesive, intense time. Yeah. And that we captured that. And that I think that Chris was really aware of that, and that he was you were really delicate with it. And I really appreciate that, because you were just like, I don't want to say much more than what we've said, because I don't think we need to, and we just need to protect this a little bit. Makes me emotional. Yeah. Because that's how you felt, Yeah. And I really appreciated that, because it was such an intense thing to move through, as in making the album and then going through everything like that in your life, and you were just like, let's leave it like that. Yeah.
It was interesting, because I think before we made the album, I was like, oh, what's the new Snowpoet album going to sound like? It's going to be mental with all this stuff. And then I think when it came to the reality of making it, you kind of, the process, by the end of it, it did, if someone had shown me a mirror ball or a mirror pair of headphones of like, this is what the next album is going to be like after we made the first one, I'd be pretty shocked, I think. But I think when it happened, and it just, everything made sense,
It feels, they're all important in the journey, aren't they, in the evolution. This feels like a very important one, because it feels to me like the one where the formula really started to be established between those aspects of the ensemble, jazz or jazz adjacent or interactive, acoustic, those elements combined with the kind of sound design and the ethereal production and so a lot of the elements that I think sort of were touched on, more than touched on in the first record, but you sort of leaned into more of those aspects in the second. Did it feel that way to you? And it sort of has then led to a kind of blend that then has followed from there with the third and fourth album as well? Or is it?
Yeah, I feel like we're becoming, I don't know, we're getting more experience, I think individually, in all the projects that we're involved in, outside of Snowpoet. And I think we, of course, how can you not? We always bring that back into the new process where we make a new album. Yes. but that they're all leading on from each other. And if we listen back to the first album, it's like it just feels so
That's always
of
the
another
way, isn't
time,
it?
you know. And I feel like this album, like that what we're just talking about, that also feels of its time, and it's just, you know,
you hear the period of time, especially when you're oh, you know, you've had a few years away from the record. Like even when I listen to the third record now, I'm like, wow, I remember
a time
that.
warp, isn't
It's
it?
a time
it
warp.
is a
Yeah,
time
it's a
warp.
time machine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, look, that feels like a lovely note to end on, guys. Thank you, Chris and Lauren, for sharing so openly, and thank you, listeners, for listening.
Thanks,
and we're looking
Thanks, Oli.
forward, my pleasure, to episode 3 very soon. Speak to you soon, guys. Thanks for listening.